making decisions for the right reasons versus for ego or fear, right? It could go either way.
I think you hit that right on the head with ego.
Oh
People
yeah.
have to feed their ego by saying, "I am the CEO," or "I am the owner of," until they get sued. It's like, "It's not me, he owns it." Uh,
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
it is. For a lot of people, it's not to serve others and
Mhm.
help others, it's to serve and help their own egos. So
Exactly.
there's nothing wrong. You don't have to be an entrepreneur, and you're gonna stress that a little bit more to be successful or money savvy.
Oh my
So
God, no.
no, so now that you talked about entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
solopreneurship, and intrapreneurship, and whatever category we're in, we're starting to
Mhm.
make some money now, Aaron.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're making some money.
Mhm.
That's hard. I haven't heard that in a while. But anyway, we're making some money. How do we take care of it?
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I think ultimately, there and that's such a broad topic, right? I mean, we have kind of eight pillars in which we look at money. And number 1 is really assessing your mindset around money, right? You can't change something or do something right when you don't understand the motivations behind it. A lot of people that we work with have a fear around money, like we said, or anxiety. We actually asked this question. We have a survey of almost 5,000 students that have answered this question, and 69% of them state they have some form of money or math anxiety, meaning they feel a sense of fear, angst, or dread even talking about money. So, recognizing that, okay, if I'm anxious about something, Julie, I'll ask you this. I mean, this might not be true for you personally, knowing your personality,
I'll
but
play. I'll play.
yeah, but the general public, when you fear something, what is the typical response?
Hide.
Hide or
Don't do
avoid.
it.
Okay?
Avoid. Hide. Don't
Exactly.
do it.
So ultimately, if you're going through life fearing something and avoiding something, that's going to create major challenges. So we need to address that before we can even talk about taxes and paying off debt, right? So that's number 1. Number 2 is understanding how to grow your money in, right? Your example is somebody is making money, right? And somebody's definition of what is good money is very different person to person. And that's also fine because ultimately it you to a certain extent you need to make a certain amount of money so your needs are taken care of, right? But beyond that, if you're comfortable with a certain lifestyle, the money you make, it doesn't need to always increase if you don't necessarily want it to. You might be content with a certain income and really maybe you have a partner that makes more. So addressing what is the number for you. Most people, I would say, want to continue to grow their earnings. I would hope they would, especially as they become more skilled. But understanding how to grow your earnings
Well,
is number two.
what I see people who make more money spend
Mhm.
more money because
Oh,
as
yeah.
they get it, and then they start thinking, well, this is going to be consistent and I'm going to grow it anyway. So I'll use my charge cards and start buying stuff,
Yeah.
hoping that I'm going to make the same money, if not more. And they get worse into debt when they actually
1000%.
could have, you know, kept debt free, still had some fun, and still grew
Mhm.
their money.
Totally. And that's the ultimate, lifestyle creep question or keeping up with the Jones. It's the more money you make, the more things that I'm going to tell a personal example because this is ridiculous. So I'm getting married and for a
Congratulations.
long time, I had a very big issue spending money because I was like, I had my own financial journey and I was very stressed about spending money. And so I have a lot of stories. Like I wore the same $20 dress on main stage presentations for 8 years. Like border, like cheap versus frugal. I was probably a little bit cheap. Okay.
Mhm.
So, but I mean, now I've had to make through this whole registry process, right? So things I never, and I was annoyed. I didn't even want a registry and my mom insisted it. So what's funny enough is now that I've gone through this registry process, I have all these new needs that I've identified in my house that if I don't get them, I'm like, I need to buy these now. And I need to do all these things now that I have the means to be able to do that, but I don't need it, right? So it's lifestyle creep is number 1, which goes to the next element, which is it is not about how much money you make. Again, basic needs taken care of and quality of life so you're not stressed. But once you get to a certain point, then it's about what you keep and what you do with it, right? Making sure I mean, it's so basic and everybody says it, but it's living within your means, right? Period. It's just understanding what you can afford and not afford If you want something more, then you need to work for it, but making sure that you have, um, you manage the lifestyle creep. So money out, which is managing expenses, understanding a profit and loss statement. If you're a business owner, of course, you can also apply a profit and loss statement to your own household, right? What do you do with profit? Do you go spend that on a trip to Cabo? Do you go put it in investments, right? So that's
Hopefully
number. So
both.
we've got, yeah, both is ideal,
Hopefully
right?
both. Hopefully both.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got money mindset, money in, money out. Then the next is money borrowed. So really understanding, what money have you historically borrowed? So what debt do you need to minimize or eliminate? Obviously, some debt is necessary for many people, whether it's student loans to fund an education, whether it's a mortgage. Obviously, hopefully, there's no consumer debt. So then we got money borrowed and giving a plan to get out of that debt, right? And there's lots of different ways we could go into that, but high level. Next, of course, is money saved. And money saved means making your money work for you and investing both in retirement and also traditional investment vehicles. We have, you could do a whole talk on investing, but we're talking basic level of investing for the long term to make sure that once you do want to step away from what you're doing, you're prepared to be taken care of, right? You don't have to work your whole life.
What is basic? Because I mean, I've learned this later on in my life. I wish somebody would have talked to me about
Oh, yeah.
401ks and
Uh-huh.
saving for my retirement when I was younger.
Hmm.
I didn't get educated on that till I was older, so I had to put more money away and
Yeah.
sacrifice more money away. So because especially now that we're living longer, who's going to
Oh, I
pay
know.
us when we retire for the next 30, 40 years? And that's when I go to the grocery stores and see these, some people do it just to do something, but I see these elderly folks who retired and had to go back to work
I
and bag
know.
groceries, and then they ask if they can carry it out to my car. I'm like, "No, let me carry it to yours."
Oh my God,
It's
you
because
that's so heartbreaking. Oh my
yeah,
God,
because
yeah.
they didn't well, either they
Yeah.
got scammed or they didn't
Yeah.
plan properly because nobody ever sat down with them and
Mhm.
said, "Hey, you don't wanna wait for the bus, you wanna wait for the limo." You know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and some people can't even afford the bus. So why is when you say a basic investment, what do you mean by that? If your company offers a 401k or if you're the sole intro or intrapreneur, uh,
Mhm.
where do you go to do that? A CD or can you start a Roth program? Or I mean, what is the
Yeah, I mean, I think you can separate them, for retirement vehicles, right, that have tax benefits, of course. So, a 401k, an IRA, if that's not, presented by your employer. So, number one is planning for retirement, which as soon as you can start, we recommend doing that. We give percentages, all that stuff in the curriculum but ultimately at the end of the day, it's what you can afford to do just to start the process. And key is automating it. And again, there's so many, if anything I'm talking about that you don't understand or you don't know what it means, I would encourage you go online and buy any personal finance book, or there's so many free resources out there. If you can't even buy a book, go on YouTube and search like basic financial literacy and start to just kind of get your feet wet in these terms because it takes time. So going back to that, retirement vehicles is number one, and then just traditional investment. And when I say basic, I'm not talking about risky investments. And again, number one, I want to be clear. I'm not a financial advisor and I'm not a
oh,
investment advisor. I
but you don't wanna
automate.
gamble your money. I mean, that's common
No.
sense. Some people
Yeah, but a
think
lot of
stocks
people,
is
yeah. So here's what I would view as not as trying to be an investor is individual stock picking, which means I hear Dogecoin went up a ton of money. I'm going to go buy a ton of Dogecoin, right? That is picking, which that's crypto. That's not even traditional investing, but taking risky level investments because you hear it's a trend. What I do and what we recommend is index funds, which there's tons of things that you can look at to Google index funds and what that means. But it's just basically taking an average of a bunch of companies within a portfolio and kind of recognizing that some stocks are going to completely fail. Some companies are going to completely fail because, as we know as entrepreneurs, most businesses fail. Okay.
yes.
At some point, most businesses fail. Some are going to skyrocket. You're going to take the average. I'm not an investor and I don't think anyone can predict what's going to happen within a company. And
Not these
so,
days.
yeah, not these days, exactly. So, making sure, and if you need help learning about that, research it. There's tons of free books. Again, and talking to someone that can help you out with it. But you do got to learn,
You
our
know, a
program.
lot of banks, offer that
Totally.
education. If you go into your local bank, like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or any of those banks, they
Hmm.
have an investment specialist.
Yeah.
And what they do is, like you say, they diversify. So if
Hmm.
you're putting in 100 a month or you're putting in 500 a month, it goes into this pot. So why one is growing and one is sinking, it all balances out so that
Yeah.
but it compounds over years. People think, well, it's been in there a year or two and I didn't make any money. No, 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 no.
Hmm.
You start really young, and by the time you get older, you're going to be shocked at what's in there.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, it's incredible what compound interest can do for you when it's in a savings vehicle or when it's in an investment vehicle, right? Debt is the opposite, right? If anyone has credit card debt, you see what happens with compound interest in a negative manner. And
Yes.
it's really, really bad and it's really dangerous. And that's why people get in a cycle. But if you do that on the opposite end and invest your money, again, with the making sure you're doing it in the appropriate manner and not being super risky. Um, Ideally, in the long term, and traditionally speaking, it's going to work for you. So that's kind of the next element, which again we
What's
could
the
talk.
rule of thumb there? Just, I mean, the basic rule of thumb. If I'm making X amount of money, what percentage of that money? Because most people will sit there and say, hey, Erin, I don't have money. I live week for week. And people do this to me. I'm broke, but they're sitting with a pack of cigarettes that cost them
Yeah,
$10 in their pocket. They're holding a Starbucks. They got the greatest $600 sneakers on. They're driving a nice car, but they're broke.
yeah, I
It's
know.
like, how l- let let's stop hearing the words I'm broke. My parents, like I said, they made a buck 50 an hour. How the hell did they do it? With four kids when we were
I know.
immigrants. So how did they pay everything off? So, but they understood that they had to take a little. What is that?
And so
10%, 20%?
here's my answer. I would say whatever you will do to actually do it. So if I say
Beautiful.
if I say 25%, somebody's going to say, "Oh my god, I can't. I don't even have that." So fine, literally do 1%. It's
Do
about
something.
Yeah, it's about building a muscle. We also teach that for business owners, which is transferring a certain portion of sales into a separate account to build up cash reserves. Last statistic I heard from JP Morgan was the average small business, how many has I was going to ask you, I'm just going to tell you, has
Okay.
14 days liquidity, okay? The average small business in the United States, so when COVID happened, they only had 2 weeks of cash reserve.
Mhm.
That's why all this, it's survival of the fittest in business. And in life, it ultimately, money is the currency that we rely on. So I would say if that's 1% of your income, if it's $5 that you're willing to transfer, so you start to see and build confidence, because a lot of times it's the fear and confidence that needs to happen for the breakthrough versus building the habit,
But
you
you're
know?
talking about not putting $5 in a savings account because that's
No,
not going to grow your money. Uh,
no.
it's into an investment that is
Mhm.
a portfolio that has like
Yeah.
electrical and gas or whatever. It's diversified. But I'll
Hmm.
be honest with you, even I cried at when somebody told me 10%. I'm like, I can't afford 10%
Yeah.
a while back because I was living on the edge, as you know, even as an entrepreneur, you're always,
Hmm.
uh, but I'll tell you what, once you do it, you don't miss it.
No. Oh
It's
my
like
God, no.
it automatically gets taken out of your check,
Hmm.
and you're like, you don't miss it. So, but
It's
at first you do.
Oh, yeah. Well,
And it,
and you think you can't live without it, but once you automate it, the key is automating it.
yes.
And I have someone in my life that I'm really trying to encourage to do this. And once they've done it, it's kind of exciting, right? It's like, oh my God, I have an investment account, it's growing and things like that. And this individual, I'm not going to say because if they listen to this, they'd know, but they check this investment account like 3 times a day. And it's like, no, you are supposed to put it there and check it like couple times a year maybe. This is a long-term activity. This is Your efforts are now best spent in this individual's case figuring out how to increase their earnings because they're at a point where in their career they're in their 20s, they need to make more money. They're in the career building stage, right? So I think just really setting it and forgetting it, and once you get to a point where you can increase it. And I think that's the challenge with so many things is everybody's looking for like what is the one size fits all approach, and
Mm.
the reality is there isn't. It's whatever approach is going to cause you to take action.